Video games! You love them, I know you do. And if your childhood was anything like mine, you played them constantly. And by constantly, I mean all the stinking time. I mean, you come home from school, you throw your bag in your room, and what do? You sit down, pick up that controller, and you never let go. But then what happens? Your mom has to come in and ruin all the fun. Yeah, your mom's not any fun. And you know what she says? Yeah, you know what she says. She says you better stop playing so many video games, young man, or you're gonna rot your brain. Now, I'm sure I'm not the only person who's had that lecture before, but as a Nintendo junkie, I was pretty offended. What, my brain? Are you serious? Is there any kind of scientific evidence to back that up? Fast forward to today, where I don't play as much as I used to. It kind of happens when you have a job. Oh, well, whatever. But still, I'd like to know, are video games nothing more than mental junk food? Did I just waste my entire childhood? Or are there actually some redeeming qualities that I might not have been aware of?
Probably not.
But before we find out, we're gonna take a quick look at
The bad effects of video games!
Number 1. Social consequences.
This one's pretty straightforward. When you throw your backpack in your room and play video games all day, every day, odds are it's going to cut into some time that you would otherwise have for other things. In other words, you isolate yourself when you're playing your game, and you'll have a general disinterest in social interactivity. Unless you're playing a two-player game, then you're okay.
Hello? Hello?
But video games can cut into homework time too. An article in USA Today reports,
First-year students whose roommates brought a video game player to college studied 40 minutes less each day on average. Those 40 minutes of lost study time translated into first semester grades that were 0.241 points lower on a 4.0 grade scale.
only 40 minutes? They obviously don't have my data. Well, I can personally attest to these aspects, because this has been the case for me too. For example, I used to be a really reclusive and introverted person. My grades were alright, but I could have had straight A's if I really wanted them. Jeez, it was always history where I got a B. And then I always messed up my 4.0. Makes me so mad. Gosh, makes me so mad.
Number 2. Violent tendencies.
Okay, so some parents won't let their kids play any video games at all because of all the violence that's in them, and they don't want that kind of negative influence around their kids. I can understand the concern, but that's assuming that all video games are excessively violent. Take, for instance, Tetris. Now, I want you to stop and just look how violent this game is. Oh, the humanity! Alright, maybe that was a bad example, but still, take all your classic Nintendo games. You've got Mario, you got Zelda, you've got Mega Man. And do they have violence? Yeah, of course they do. You got bad guys getting smooched, shot, stabbed, exploded out the wazoo! But here's my one question, the one thing that bugs me. Is Nintendo any more violent than, say, the Looney Tunes cartoons that your kids watch every Saturday morning? Do parents freak out and have the same objections to Daffy Duck getting blasted in the face with a rifle on television? If so, I haven't heard it. And you know why? Because that'd be ridiculous. Cartoons being violent? No, no way. But video games? Way too violent. Get that stuff out of my house. Okay. The only real difference I can see between video games and cartoons is the interactive element involved. Instead of cartoon characters beating the snot out of each other, your child controls the action. The point of the game oftentimes is to engage in fights and kill bad guys. What's more, the game rewards you for doing it. Gives you 100 points, look at that! According to a study at Iowa State University, violent video games do in fact boost aggressive behavior in children who play them. But the kinds of games they were testing were more like Mortal Kombat, which is way too much for even me. I prefer not to see the insides of characters, thanks. But nowadays, video games have more advanced graphics and sound, and are intended for a more mature audience. Most notably, those who grew up with classics and are now older. This means games are more prone to have mature themes, contain blood, or use curse words. See, if a parent doesn't want their 10-year-old kid to play Grand Theft Auto, I'd totally understand. But when you forbid your children to play any video games at all, they might be missing out on some of the
Good effects of video games!
Now this is the part we've all been waiting for. What on earth could be good about video games? Well, if you stop and forget what you've been told all your life, you might think of some. Like maybe...
Number 3. Life skills.
Life skills. Yeah, video games can teach you life skills. But how? They're about killing bad guys and racking up points. Well, I'll tell you. See, when you're playing a challenging video game and you're trying your best to beat it, you're not only trying to beat it with your reflexes, but also with your mind. You may not know it at the time, but your brain is sifting through all the different ways you could try to win, and after you try a few times, eventually, you'll arrive at a solution that works. Then you can progress on to the next part of the game. You'll learn problem-solving skills, strategy building, and perseverance through hardships from challenging video games. It's awesome! And how far in life would you get without any one of those alone? Probably not through college. Try explaining that to your mom.
Yeah, Mom, I'll do my homework later.
A little busy right now actually learning something that matters.
Number 4. The can-do attitude.
On the other hand, every time you try and fail, you'll lose a life, so there are consequences for your failure. This means that if the player wants to experiment, they have to do so carefully because there's punishment for failure. And isn't that true in real life? Look, here's the bottom line. When you're playing video games, you want to win. You want to be better than the Nintendo, and you'll keep trying until you are. The Wall Street Journal has an article that touches on this subject.
Research shows that gamers spend an average of 80% of their time failing in game worlds, but instead of giving up, they stick with a difficult challenge and use the feedback of the game to get better. Number 5. Real-world application.
Yeah, sure, this stuff is interesting, but do the alleged benefits of video games have any impact on people in the real world? And if not, I've probably wasted your time.
Wait, what?
Don't worry about it, cause there is documented evidence that demonstrates the good aspects of video games.
In action.
Video games aren't just for losers. Just look at Hank Cheyenne, the current world record holder for the arcade classic Donkey Kong. He's a surgeon, not some guy living in his parents' basement.
I live in my parents' basement.
Speaking of surgeons, here's a study from the Archives of Surgery that reports that surgeons who played just 3 hours a week resulted in 37% fewer errors and 27% faster completion time of surgery than their non-playing colleagues. What's more, they found that past video game skills are linked to their results. The study even goes as far as to suggest that video games could be used as a trading tool for surgeons. Now, what I find truly amazing here is the game that they were testing was Top Gun, and that was a flight simulation game on NES, so it has nothing to do with the medical field at all. So you got games like Gran Turismo, which are simulation games and try to be as authentic as the real thing. And if you're testing race car drivers, for example, by having them in a race car simulator, the results are to be expected. But for a game with nothing to do with the same field you're working in, that ought to tell you right there that it doesn't matter what game you play. As long as you're being challenged, overcoming obstacles, and pressing on, you'll be getting these results.
Wrapping it up.
So, we've learned a lot. But the question still remains, are video games only there to rot our brains? Well, I feel fit to answer with a resilient
No!
games train and even sharpen your mind to figure out how to beat them, and they make us strive to go on. Plus, they give us a sense of rewards and consequences for our decisions, and all of these can be used in real-life situations, including the workforce. But does that mean we should spend our entire lives in front of the television?
No!
While some effects are good, others can leave us isolated and without a good sense of time management. See, it's a trade-off. Video games are neither all good nor all bad. So what's the verdict? Like many other things in life, enjoy it, but do so in moderation.